Welcome to Legendary Physique. I'm Richard Baldwin, your host, and I'm talking to Jerry Brainum, the author of the Applied Metabolics newsletter. And I think we got a good one coming up here for August, right, Jerry?
Excellent one. This one's it's a monster issue, Richard. It's almost 54 pages. It's
Wow.
the newsletter normally averages 40 to 50. This one's a little heavy, and when I describe what's in it, you'll understand why. For example, the one of the articles is it's basically about the relationship. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people consider steroids, even testosterone, to be bad for the heart.
Yeah.
In other words, there's a major controversy. Uh, but like any other drug, it all depends on how long you use it and how much you use.
Yeah, because
I
I've
mean,
heard that it's actually good for your heart if you have some testosterone. If you have low testosterone, it can be bad for your heart.
exactly. In
Yeah.
other words, lower testosterone is actually associated with a heart failure.
Yeah.
So you have to have a certain amount of testosterone to keep your heart healthy. But like I say, there's a scientific term called hormesis, which I wrote about in Applied Metabolics, where a little bit, basically what it's defined as a certain amount of something, anything, could be exercise, is very good for you. But once you go past a certain point, the effects reverse and it becomes paradoxically bad for you. And that's the same with steroids. They're good up to a point. Anyway, they came out with this study in a major medical heart journal where they examined the long-term effects of steroids. And that's rare, because most of the studies of steroids that you see in medical journals are usually short-term studies where they look at it for maybe, at the most, maybe let's say a month to 2 months. This one basically looked at long-term effects of steroids, and they studied some athletes and bodybuilders who had used steroids for over 20 years.
Wow.
And they came out with, unfortunately, they found some serious effects of these high-dose use of steroids affecting the heart that stay with you. So most of the time, any side effects you get from steroids usually revert back to normal value when you get off the steroids. In other words, if you have anything wrong with your, let's say, blood lipids or that type of thing, higher blood pressure, liver enzymes, all these things that can be affected by steroids usually return back to normal when you get off it.
And the old guys cycled.
Yeah, they cycle, and that's very important to do, because when you cycle off them, you're allowing your body to heal itself. This is the danger, staying on it all year round. Especially if it's high dose, you're like a car heading for a brick wall. Something's going to give sooner or later. But I don't think even the guys today are stupid enough to stay on high doses year round. I don't think any of them do. Judging by the way they look between shows, I mean, some of these guys get smooth as babies. Some of them get fat. You can see they're not taking high doses all year round. But anyway, I go into I talk about this study, but rather than just talk about the study, in this article, I discuss every possible way steroids can affect the heart, all the possible mechanisms. It's kind of shocking when you read it. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just trying to tell them what happens, because very few people are aware of these kind of long-range effects of steroids. So that's one article. And then another article, which I had a lot of fun doing or writing, is I train. You ever got named Vince Garanda, Richard?
He's all over the internet lately. Everybody's talking about it. He's become the topic of the day lately.
Yeah, Vince Garanda has had a reemergence. I mean, he's like
it's shocking the crap out of me.
Yeah, he's a legend.
I go in the gym and ask somebody who Larry Scott is, and they don't know.
No,
but all these young guys now, for some reason, are even thinking about Vince Garanda.
Yeah, well, what happened was I got an email from one of my subscribers, and he asked me if I could do an article on Vince Garanda. What this guy wasn't aware of was I actually knew Vince Garanda and trained at his gym for a year under his supervision. Yeah. So I had a kind of a unique perspective. There's a lot of people that have written about Vince, but not many people that actually knew the guy and trained under him. So I wrote about that, and I wrote about all of Vince's his training techniques and his nutritional principles, which were way ahead of his time. So and I talk about Vince himself. Vince was a kind of unique personality. Anyone who knew him could tell you that he's one of those guys you either you loved or you hated, because he'd be very irascible to most people unless you knew kind of how to handle him, which I did. I got along great with Vince.
I don't think I would, from the stories Larry Scott told me, and you've told me some other guys. I don't think I would have, but you did, though.
Yeah, I did because
Yeah.
I knew what to expect from him. I was
Well,
warned.
you have to be warned, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. If I hadn't been warned, to be honest with you, and I just showed up at his gym like I did when I was 18 years old, I would have been very ugly because he insults people right off the bat. He was very insulting, and I mean, he seemed like he was continually in a bad mood. Although, if you got to know him, he was actually very funny, and he'd laugh along with you. I mean,
Yeah.
it all depends on your perspective. But I talk about all these methods, and the gist of the article is how relevant are Vince's techniques today? In other words, with all the passing years, let's say 40, 50 years have gone by, how much of Vince's teachings still hold up based on today's science? And that's what I discuss in the article. And I list many, many of his training principles and his nutrition principles. And to tell you the truth, most of them are relevant today, and they are very useful today. And this is a great article for somebody that's, let's say, been training regularly and is in a rut, not making gains. If you try some of the techniques I talk about in this article, I can almost guarantee you'll break out of a rut because I did it myself. When I trained at Vince's, I was in a training run. Vince put me on some of his training principle ideas or routines, and I started making gains again. All right, it was very young, but still,
I can't
you
wait
know,
to read that one.
yeah, it's a really good. I mean, I had a lot of fun writing that article, and then I talk about something that's kind of interesting. Like a lot of people wonder how fast does it take to start growing muscles? Because when you begin training, about how long does it take to really start showing results, and when does it start to peter off? Because it's obvious that when you first start training, you make your most rapid gains because your body's not used to training. But when does it start to kind of taper
Well, a lot
off?
of
When
that
it's
strength gains, though, is it because you get in the groove and it's
Yeah,
not really strength gains? Like it's more like your muscles learn how to coordinate each other.
well, that's it. The first,
Yeah.
let's say, 2, 3 months, it's a neuromuscular connection
Yeah.
established. It's more like strength gains, and you don't get a lot of muscle hypertrophy, although some new studies show that you do. That's an old myth,
Okay.
but generally speaking, the first couple of months are kind of you're establishing a neuromuscular connection between the
Yeah.
muscles and the brain, and that sets the stage for proper form and lifting heavier
Right.
weights, and that leads to muscle hyper. Usually takes about 2 months. So, and the secondary question is, okay, you're starting to make gains. How long is this going to last? I mean, obviously there's got to be a limit. Although, if you look at the guys from, let's say, the 60s and 70s, you compare them to the guys today are a lot bigger. Of course, we all know that's because the guys today are taking a boatload of drugs compared to the guys of Arnold's era, and there's a genetic factor, and there's genetic factors
Yeah.
involved too, of course, and as well as training. But I talk about the possible limits of muscle size. Although I would tell you offhand that once you're close to your genetic limit, whether it's from steroids or just, let's say, normal training, you could still make changes in your physique, but a lot of it's not going to be so much muscle size as refinement.
Yeah.
You look at a guy like Arnold or these guys years ago, they didn't get a lot bigger, but they got refined as each year passed.
Yeah.
You work on weak points, for example, if you have weak calves, weak forearms, you focus on that.
Yeah, that's how Chet Yorton beat Arnold in that Mr. Universe.
That was 66
Yeah.
universe, yeah.
Yeah.
And Arnold himself told me, he said he believed that he knew that he couldn't really make major changes in size each year that he competed in the Olympia. So what he would do is he'd choose a particular muscle he felt that was lagging. Let's say it was forearms one year, and he would really train his forearms hard before the Olympia to improve them. And in his view, he says the judges would actually somehow notice his increased forearm
Yeah.
development, and it would give the illusion that his whole body had improved, and he'd wind up winning the contest. This was his trick, Arnold. That's what he used to do, because he knew he couldn't really improve. You couldn't make super major when you're
Yeah.
at his level. I mean, like this guy Phil Heath, for example, the current Mr. Olympia. I mean, he's in great shape, and sure, he's improved over the years. But honestly, some people criticize me. I didn't see that much difference when he won last year to the year before. To me,
Yeah.
I saw very little difference. And I'm not trying to put the man down. What I'm saying is he's already probably reached his limit, and there's not much he can do to get much
Yeah.
bigger. The guy is not that tall. How much bigger can he get?
But
I mean,
he's
so
got very few weak points too. I can't even think of one. Can you?
no, he
Yeah,
has no weak points. I mean,
yeah,
the guy. I mean, the only thing that can hurt him, I mean, I think he's what, about 33, 34 years old. The only thing that can mess him up is to get a bad injury, like what happened to Dorian Yates when he had to
yeah.
retire. He had to retire because of injuries, or if he, if it's, God forbid, I don't want this to happen to anyone. If he overdoes the drugs, overdoes the drugs and gets sick,
Yeah.
liver problems, heart problems, something like that. Other than that, this guy can keep winning the Olympia year after year until I think the change. I think though that assuming he's 34, I think he could probably win until about maybe 37, 38. And somebody will start, and then he's going to start to recede a little bit,
Yeah.
and somebody will catch up to him and win. That's
Well,
probably
his
what.
nickname isn't a gift for nothing.
Yeah, he's definitely
Yeah.
a genetic freak. That's why I get a kick when I see people. I don't really look at the bodybuilding magazines anymore. Since I stopped writing for them, but I get a kick when I sometimes I'll leaf through them and I still see like Phil, or I see the YouTube videos. Phil Heath's chest routine, Phil Heath's delt routine,
Yeah.
Phil Heath's arm routine, and I think to myself, these routines aren't going to do anything for anybody but Phil Heath. I mean, if these guys think they're going to look like Phil Heath following his routine, they're in severely self-delusion. I mean, and the form the guy uses. I remember watching him do shoulders. He was doing everything wrong, everything short, little bit. Most guys would get no development at all training
Same with
like that.
Sergio. Isn't that what Sergio Oliva would do too?
Yeah,
Like
he's
these
Sergio.
partial movements and stuff, and still just get huge.
Yeah, it's a very short, partial
Yeah.
movements, but that won't work for most guys. Yeah,
No.
sure, you can do short. You can do short movement. I'm going to have an article about that in the play. You can do partial movements as long as you also do full range movements. That's fine. But if your whole workout's short range movements, unless you're a genetic freak like Sergio or Phil Heath,
Yeah.
don't expect much. Because you're not working with the full range of muscle fibers when you do that. And then I have the last article for August. Is I've discussed Richard, have articles about egg nutrition in Applied Metabolics, where I've kind of talked about the myths relating to eggs and health
Right.
and just how healthy are eggs. Well, I came across two new studies delivered at a medical conference where they compared the anabolic effects of egg yolks to egg whites, and and the thing that caught my eye after reading both studies is is they were completely contradictory to each other. I mean, one article said that egg yolks, you have to have whole eggs if you want to get maximum anabolic benefit. Now, Vince Garante, who I just talked about, he was absolutely insistent on whole eggs. I mean,
Huh.
he thought people that just consume egg whites were out of their minds because he felt that cholesterol. He knew that it was the raw material for testosterone, and he thought that any bodybuilder who threw away the yolk was insane. But this.
Well, and now we're over the fat scare, right? They used to say, "Oh, you don't need the fat."
Well, it's the fat and the cholesterol.
Yeah,
They
and
thought
they said
that.
that's
Yeah, and
not the
for
case. Yeah.
bodybuilders are worried about the fat in the eggs. They thought it would smooth them out.
Yeah.
And they found that egg whites are pure protein, which is true.
Yeah.
Egg whites are nearly pure protein. It has very little fat, trace amounts. And but the other study said that egg whites, when they compared egg whites to egg yolks, they came out equal, same anabolic effect. And I found this curious because when you're eating whole eggs, first of all, you're getting twice as much protein, and you're getting a much better balance of amino acids in a whole egg compared to an egg white. So how can egg whites be just as anabolic as whole eggs? It doesn't make sense. But what I did in this article was I analyzed and I discussed in detail the possible reasons to explain, which type of egg is best if you want an anabolic effect, if you want to get muscle growth from eggs, which is the best way to eat eggs. And that's the final article. And like I say,
that sounds great.
This issue is like 50, just under 54 pages. It's monstrous. In fact, I'm still editing it. I mean, it's due out. It comes out Tuesday, August 1st. But I mean, I'm still editing it. It takes that's how big this thing is.
Well, I'm excited about all three articles, and I'm sure all the subscribers will be too. And if anyone hasn't subscribed yet, they definitely don't want to miss this one, especially the Vince Garanda article. That's going to be a big one, I think.
Oh yeah, the Vince. I mean, that to me is tremendous because, like I say, if you're in a rut or you want to push some gains, read that article, and I almost guarantee, I don't care what your genetics, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of that. I'm
Well, I'm
telling you.
excited about seeing your analysis of all of his principles and which ones you think,
Yeah.
well, this one may not be up, but boy, he was right on with these. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, well, Vince was a human being.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. We're all fallible. I was going to say infallible. We're all fallible.
Well, Jerry, thanks a lot. Sounds like a great issue coming up, and I can't wait to read it.
Yep.
All right, you have a good one, and we'll be back with you next month.
Okay, take care, Richard.
All right, you too.
If you want the latest in exercise and nutrition science, then sign up for Jerry Brainum's Applied Metabolics newsletter.